Chapter 8. Oliver is arrested. For many days, Oliver remained in Fagin's room, picking the labels out of the handkerchiefs, and sometimes taking part in the game already described. At last he began to feel the need for fresh air, and begged the old gentleman to allow him to go out to work with his two companions. Finally, Fagin agreed to his request, and the three boys went out. At first they walked at such a slow pace that Oliver began to think that his companions were not going to work at all. But suddenly the Dodger stopped and pulled his companions back. "What's the matter?" asked Oliver. "Quiet," replied the Dodger. "Do you see that old man by the bookshop?" "The old gentleman across the street," said Oliver. "Yes, I can see him." "He'll do," said the Dodger. "A first-class opportunity," observed Charlie Bates. Oliver looked from one to the other with the greatest surprise, but he was not permitted to make any inquiries, for the two boys walked quickly across the road, closely following the old gentleman. Oliver walked a few steps behind them, and then, not knowing whether to advance or withdraw, stood looking on in silent amazement. The old gentleman was a very respectable-looking person, with a powdered head and gold glasses. He had picked up a book from the shelf inside the bookshop, and there he stood, reading it. He was so involved in his reading that he did not see the shop, the street, or the boys. He saw nothing but his book. Imagine Oliver's horror and alarm to see the Dodger slip his hand into the old gentleman's pocket and pull out a handkerchief. To see him hand this to Charlie Bates, and finally to see them both running away round the corner at full speed. The whole mystery of the handkerchiefs and the watches and the jewels and the old man became clear at last in the boy's mind. He stood terrified and confused for a moment, and then he ran away as fast as his legs could carry him. All this took no more than a minute. At the very moment when Oliver began to run away, the old gentleman, putting his hand in his pocket and missing his handkerchief, turned sharply round. Seeing Oliver run away at such a rapid pace, he very naturally concluded that he was the robber and, shouting, "Stop, thief!" as loudly as he could, ran after him, book in hand. The Dodger and Bates, hearing the cry and seeing Oliver running, guessed exactly how the matter stood. They stopped running away and, shouting, "Stop, thief!" too, they joined in the chase like good citizens. "Stop, thief! Stop, thief!" There is a magic in the sound. The cry is taken up by 100 voices, and the crowd of pursuers increases at every step and turning. The poor, breathless child ran, with terror in his eyes, until at last they caught him. He fell to the ground, and the crowd gathered eagerly round him, each new arrival struggling with the others for a look. "Stand aside! Here is the gentleman! Is this the boy, sir?" "Yes." Oliver was lying, covered with mud and dust, and bleeding from the mouth, looking wildly round at the faces that surrounded him, when the old gentleman was pushed into the circle by some of the pursuers. "Yes," said the gentleman, "I'm afraid it is the boy, poor fellow. He has hurt himself." "I did it, sir," said a great big fellow, stepping forward. "I stopped him, sir." The fellow touched his hat with a smile, expecting something for his trouble, but the old gentleman looked at him with an expression of dislike, and would have run away himself had not a police officer at that moment made his way through the crowd and seized Oliver by the collar. "Come, get up," said the officer roughly. "It wasn't me, indeed, sir. It was two other boys," said Oliver, looking round desperately. "They are here somewhere." "Oh, no, they aren't," said the officer. "Come on, get up." "Don't hurt him," begged the old gentleman. "Oh, no, I won't hurt him," replied the officer, pulling Oliver's jacket half off his back. "Come, I know you. It won't do. Will you stand upon your feet, you young devil?" Oliver, who could hardly stand, was dragged along the street by the collar of his coat, at a rapid pace. The gentleman walked on with them by the officer's side, and many of the people in the crowd ran on ahead of them and stared back at Oliver from time to time.